Good evening, guys. My name is Lawrence, and I am a physiotherapist just working at Penza Street Physio. Um, I wanted to create this video so that I could potentially help people, lifters in general, um, with regards to rehabilitating maybe their tendon injury, as I have recently sustained one myself. Um, at the moment, I am a powerlifter and I was preparing for a competition. And what happened was that my left knee started hurting after a session of pause squats. I think why I do know that it was the quadriceps tendon. So it was the tendon above the patella, your kneecap, and that was where it was hurting. And I had to manage it about 2 to 3 weeks out from competition. So that was quite challenging and a little bit emotional in a sense, as I could not achieve what I wanted to achieve, but that's cool. You deal with what you got on the day, and I couldn't have performed better on the day with the cards that I had. So probably pretty fun day, pretty fun comp, and that was, yeah, it was pretty cool. So I kind of just want to get right into it because I don't see anything um, on sort of the internet that details rehabbing a tendon, perhaps from start to finish, and I will explain it potentially in the context of lifting. But these concepts can be applied to other sports as well. You just might have to change the exercises and change the emphasis depending on the demands of the sport. So I am going to share screen, and let's go to this one here. So I have the 3D atlas of human anatomy of the knee. I just want to show you guys how potentially complex a structure such as the knee can be. So, I mean, if you get pain, say above your kneecap, and let's say it is a tendon, or whether it is or whether it isn't, you can see here that there's so many different structures here. It's crazy. You got nerves, you got blood vessels, you got bursa here. And if I just sort of strip down the layers, sorry, then we can see that you have the quadriceps tendon here, which is pretty much bang on where I was feeling pain. But you also have all these arteries and veins, which can be a little bit variable on different people. As I strip down the layers a bit more, you can see here that there's your patella, and there's a tendon of the vastus intermedius, which is the muscle below your rectus femoris. And you also have a suprapatellar bursa behind all that as well. So it could be quadriceps tendon, but it also could be the suprapatellar bursa that could be a source of symptoms. That being said, you probably should get checked out by a competent health professional. And if you can't find one, well, let me know. So I can hopefully point you in the right direction. So if we come back to sort of the tendon, there are a few sort of principles in which you should start rehabbing the tendon once it's inflamed. I think the first thing you need to do is to set your expectations, because if you want to fully rehabilitate the tendon, it does take a while. It can take upwards of months for it to fully rehabilitate. You'll be pain-free well before then, but rehabilitation isn't complete until you restore the robustness and the elastic qualities of the tendon. So that's one thing. That's one thing. You gotta set your expectations. You know, if you injure your tendon before comp, just as an example, I squatted 255 for a double the few weeks out from comp, and then I sustained the quadriceps tendon inflammation, and at comp I was only able to squat 250 on the day, and that was a pretty high RPE. It was pretty high. So it is what it is. Trying to get too discouraged, but like I said, you want to set your expectations. If you're a coach coaching an athlete, you may want to adjust the numbers on the day and be prepared for a plan B, plan C, plan D, and so on and so forth. The second thing I want you to understand is that you probably want to determine the rough stage of the tendinopathy, because if you look into the research, there are three, at the moment anyway, there are three sort of rough sort of timelines, or three rough sort of stages that the tendon can go through. So the first stage is a reactive tendinopathy. So when it's all inflamed, it's all pissed off. At that stage, you probably don't want to push it too much. The second stage is when it goes into tendon disrepair. That's a more subacute stage. And then the third stage is a more of a degenerative sort of tendinopathy stage. You probably want to keep it in the reactive stage. Ideally, you don't want to let it go into tendon disrepair or even a degenerative tendinopathy stage. This is obviously dependent on other factors as well, such as your demographic, your genetics, age is a big one, but that doesn't mean you can't get any stronger. That doesn't mean you can't improve. You can improve your outcomes potentially despite what the scans will say. But that being said, you do need to be reasonable with yourself. So like I said, if you just sort of injure your tendon and your health professional, your physio, diagnoses it as a tendinopathy issue or a tendonitis, meaning inflammation of the tendon, then you probably shouldn't aggravate it at that stage. You probably should let it settle down. That being said, if we move on to the next point, you want to know how your tendon behaves. So if you do get like a little niggle in your tendon and it's just kind of grumbly and going on for a while, it's probably not in that reactive stage anymore. It's probably in that sort of second stage of tendon disrepair. That being said, we can approach the rehab in a more aggressive sense. So you want to understand how your tendon behaves. So you want to know what it's like when you sort of wake up in the morning. You want to know what it's like during the day, depending on what activities you do. You have to be aware of what it's doing, because then if you're aware of what it's doing or how it behaves, then you can set countermeasures to be able to address it as much as you can. So then, for example, for my quadriceps tendon, since it's on the top of the kneecap, it doesn't like being bent. So my knee doesn't like being bent for a long period of time, because as soon as I sort of let go, it gets really stiff and I got to sort of, bend it back and forth. So knowing how that behaves, you can kind of tell yourself, well, don't get yourself in that position in the first place. Try not to sort of sit, with your with your knee fully bent, as that what happens is that the tendon gets compressed, and when the tendon's pissed off, it doesn't like compression. When the tendon's not pissed off, it can handle whatever it wants, but when it is currently sort of in a state where it's provocative or painful, then it's a bit more sensitive. And if it's a bit more sensitive, then you probably need to respect it a bit more. So that's important, to know how your tendon behaves, know what aggravates it, know what makes it better too. So then if it makes it, so if anti-inflammatories makes it better, then you could potentially use that as a modality. Obviously see your doctor for advice. That being said, I remember I was chugging a fair few anti-inflammatories before comp, during comp, but then after comp, I let it settle down because I was using the anti-inflammatory medication as a temporary measure to allow it to settle down, but I knew that that wasn't a permanent solution. And truth be told, I started the rehab right after comp. I planned to start the rehab after comp anyway, to try and start rehabbing it. So the next principle, sort of going from how your tendon behaves, is you got to establish its current set point. Okay, you got to establish its current baseline. It's really, really important. So right now, like for example, if your tendon can only handle squatting 70 kilos for 3 reps, that's your baseline. That's fine. Okay, you need to know where you're at, because if you don't know where you are and you don't know where you're going, well, you have no hope of trying to rehab this thing. You really need to know where you're at. So then establish your current set point, establish your current tolerances, because yes, even though you may squat 200 kilo plus whatever, your tendon at this stage may not be able to handle that. So you have to respect where it's at the moment, okay? And I'll go through this just with an Excel sheet, just to run through sort of theoretical numbers, or the rough numbers that I've been going through now to get myself sort of back into squatting, and hopefully beyond. Well, definitely beyond. Once you've established a set point, you need to establish your goals. So you need to establish kind of where you were at before, potentially, or ideally where you were at before you injured your tendon. So you want to make sure that, for example, if you were squatting, say, 200 kilos for 3 sets of 10, then that's a decent amount of volume you got to get to. And if you're only squatting 100 kilos for a set of 5 at the moment, well, you know where you're at, you know where you need to get to. You just need to basically form a path or a plan to the goal. Okay. I also forgot. You probably in the point saying that, knowing how your tendon behaves. I know, and everyone's a bit different, because I know some people's tendons don't like loads. So then if you go too heavy, they may flare up. So then your rehab would probably be more inclined to just building volume at lower intensities until they can develop the tendons can develop the resilience to handle higher loads. But then I've seen it on the other spectrum as well, where the tendons are unable to handle high amounts of volume. So then in that respect, you push the intensity. So you can push the weights up, but you don't do as much. And the tendon can respond quite well, potentially. I guess once you form a powerful plan to the goal, then you execute the plan, and you have to auto-correct along the way. So I usually use something akin to a traffic light system, where if it's a green light, if the pain is sort of manageable, and this comes back to knowing how your tendon behaves. If you know how your tendon behaves, so if you know that your tendon can probably handle like a 0 to 3 out of 10, for example, then you could probably like train to a 3 out of 10 pain, but don't go beyond that. And then you probably fare well after that. I'll explain shortly how you can monitor that, but like I said, I like to use a traffic light system, where green light is for example, 0 to 3 out of 10. So it's fairly low level of pain. You know you can handle it. You know your tendon's not going to get irritated afterwards, and then you can proceed from there. If you use the next light, which will be a yellow light, which will be like, for example, a 4 to 6 out of 10, that's when you probably need to be cautious. You probably wouldn't want to push more into the upper levels of that. So then if you're pushing a 6 out of 10, you might become a bit sore the next day, for example. And then if it's a red light, for example, if it's more than like a 7, if you've established for your tendon that it's more than a 7 out of 10, that actually makes it go backwards, then you should probably back off and not go there in the first place. So that being said, I'll use myself as an example. My tendon's green light basically for me is 0 to 4. Yellow light is basically 5 to 7, and anything over a 7 is painful. How do I know that? I usually use if there's any pain during the exercise, if there's pain right after finishing sort of a gym sesh, and especially if there's pain the next day upon waking. Those are my sort of indicators to know whether I've aggravated or not. And for me personally, I have used the day after as a big indicator, because if I do exercise or if I do sort of some rehab protocol for my tendon, and if I wake up the next day and it's sore as buggery, then I've definitely pushed too hard. Then I probably need to pull back. I need to review what I did, and then I probably need to sort of adjust the loads accordingly. If I wake up and the tendon actually feels better, then that to me is a really, really, really good sign. That tells me whatever the loads I did before was going well. And funny enough, the times that I have felt better in the mornings, the morning after, I have had to push through a little bit of discomfort and pain during the session, especially during my warm-ups. But as long as I hit the right amount of volume and the right amount of intensity, I've fared out in the mornings okay, and then I've proceeded from there. Just make sure when you're sort of establishing your baseline, you have your measuring, also have sort of your measuring sticks. So you need to have markers of improvement. So something that's special to you. I mean, obviously for me, my marker was low bar squatting. So I, at least once a week, was testing out my low bar to see where it's at. Testing it out, but being very careful not to overload it, so to speak. With regards to sort of improving, I guess, going from a stage where you want to, like, in the beginning, you might want to stop aggravating it. You might want to reduce the load temporarily just to let things settle down, especially if it's in a reactive stage. You might need a few days for it to settle down. At that stage, you'd probably be thinking, if the tendon's overloaded, you might want to think, oh, why is the tendon overloaded? You may want to sort of think about either is it that you've just suddenly started a GVT program and your tendon's just basically exploded because you've just overloaded it. You've gone from 0 to 100 straight away. Or is it that you've changed a particular sort of technique? Maybe you started, maybe you were squatting in flats and you started wearing like squat shoes, which would elevate the heel, which would potentially make you more upright, which would probably allow your knees to go forward over the toes a bit more, which would probably increase the amount of patellofemoral forces, so around the forces around the kneecap, which would probably increase the loads on your quad tendon. That's a potential sort of theoretical example of how sort of some biomechanics can affect it. And before someone comes up to me and says it's all about load, yes, I understand. It's all about loading. Yes, if you get the right amount of load, you will do well. But in my opinion, especially when you're dealing with powerlifters, gym goers, biomechanics doesn't matter until it matters. And then when it matters a fair bit. So respect that. If you want to start off with reduced loads, you might want to um, start off with some static holds. And so note that I've said loads a lot, okay? Tendons in the short term, like if the tendon's really reactive, yes, you might need to reduce the load. You might even need to eliminate it for a period of time. But eventually, if you want to make this better, you're gonna have to increase the load. Okay, you're gonna have to gradually introduce load. Tendons like load. Tendons respond to loading. Okay, nothing ventured, nothing gained. That's what I usually say. Okay, so then that being said, you need to be smart enough to apply the right amount of load at the right time. Okay, and allow the tendon to settle down, and then go from there. So then it might start off with isometric contractions. You might then progress to maybe slow eccentric, which is lowering contractions, or you might want to progress to slow up and down. And then you might want to start off light, go to heavy, and then you might want to increase the speed a bit more. I know that us powerlifters deal with a lot of really heavy weights, so there is a decent amount of force on the tendon. If I use my quadriceps tendon as an example, yes, there's probably lots of load on the tendon, but there's probably more forces going through the tendon if I run and jump and skip. Those of you who know me know that I do not do that at the moment, and I would probably be pretty pathetic at it at the moment. But that stretch shortening cycle, that kind of plyometric stuff, that will be part of my rehab eventually. Even if I get to the stage where I'm squatting my normal weights, I will have to eventually include that, because your tendon rehab is not really complete unless you make it more resilient than before. Okay, you want to get back to where you were before? Yeah. Look, you know what? You want to go a little bit more. You want to have a bit of a buffer just to make sure, okay? Just to make sure your tendons can handle any loads. This is why it's really important for those of you who are either working by yourself or whatever. If you need, this is where like a good physio, a good coach will really help you and guide you in this respect there, okay? For powerlifters especially, you probably need to pick your variations wisely. So if you have injured, say, your patella tendon or your quadriceps tendon, and you want to sort of squat, I mean, you might, let's be real, you probably might want to start off with like a above parallel box squat first, because chances are if you squat down all the way ass to grass, you're probably going to be a bit sore, especially if the tendon's a bit irritated. Okay. You might start off, like, you might want to decrease the range. So then you might just do half squats or like I said, above parallel box squats, because that will probably decrease the loads on the tendon if you obviously use less weight. But because you're not going down as far, you're also not compressing the tendon. So you're not squishing the tendon against the bone. And as I said before, tendons, when they're pissed off, they don't like compression and they don't like sudden heavy loads or sudden sort of loads. So you may need to start off with a variation. So if you injured your tendon, say like I did by squatting, then you probably want to just change your variation of the tendon for the time being, and just at least you squat, at least you can do some squat, but you might just start off with a easier variation first, and then gradually move to variations that will slowly stress the tendon more and more and more. So the example I can give is, let's say you're doing a above parallel box squat tempo, and then the next variation with that could be like a below sort of parallel box squat, and then the next variation after that would be like a tempo sort of full squat, for example. And then the next variation to that could be like a front squat or a safety bar squat. And then the next variation, you might want to chuck on a pair of heels or stand with your heels on a 2x4 or whatever, like be on some sort of, decline. and then squat that way. So you can do front squats, because front squats with heels is probably going to put more force on the patella or quad tendon than say front squats on your flats. So that's something that you need to think about as well. If you are coaching someone, or if you're programming yourself, or if you're trying to like figure things out for yourself, then you probably want to pick a variation that's sensible. Like I said, it's easier if you collaborate with someone. So there are sort of many people out there who can help you with this. If you go to a health professional and they just say stop, or they don't provide this plan, then I will politely say you may want to look for someone who understands your condition a bit more, who understands your situation a bit more. I haven't talked about the effects of external factors as well, such as external stressors, such as diet and things like that. That's kind of a bit outside my wheelhouse. But I have heard sort of general principles saying you should probably, eat a little bit more. You probably shouldn't be cutting, especially when you're healing from an injury. But that is up for debate. And like I said, it's not really my sort of field, my forte at the moment. So I'm going to share screen again. And let's see if I go to here and I go to volumes. Yes, I have a list of things I wanted to say. So far I'm saying it, which is good. And so I just started off here, and let's say we needed to get to, I'll write it down, 4,000 kilos of volume with the intensity of 200 kilo squats for 5, for example. For a top set. So then, like, let's say you're at, let's say you've had a testing week, so to speak, and you've tested sort of week 1, and you've done 1 rep with just the bar, and then you've done 3 reps with you've built up to maybe 70 kilos. Then you did some back downs 2x4 with 40 kilos. Well, then the amount of, and this is just, let's say, just a standard sort of squat. You've done sort of 20 to 210 to 320 kilos of volume in total, and then your weekly total ends up being 550. Well, then you know where you're at now with 550, but then we know where we need to get to, which is this puppy here for 4,000 kilos. So we've got a ways to go. So we want to increase the weight and the total volume, and then your probably top set, because we know that your top set, you're aiming for a top set of around 200 kilos. That's what you're working before you got injured. And then your volume was around 4,000 kilos before you got injured. So then you want to slowly, incrementally increase it week to week, depending on how your knee feels, right? So then if you do all this, say day 1, and then you only squat 1 day a week, for example, and then your knee feels pretty good after this, then we could go maybe the next week, and you could probably sort of build up. You could probably go, you probably warmed up with a few more reps at just the bar, 6 kilos in total. Then you decided to be a half idiot, and then you jumped to you chucked 2 plates on each side, and you did a set of 3. You did 300 kilos total. And then you back down with just 1 plate on each side, 60 kilos, and then you did 2 sets of 5. So then 60 times 5 times 2, that's 600 kilos. So then if you add all these up, your weekly total goes up to 960, okay? So then if you look at here, this is the weekly total of 960, this is the weekly total of 550, right? If we go 960 divided by 550, that's 1.745 or 1.75. I know that if you follow some people's work, especially with the acute chronic work ratio, they usually recommend something from 0.8 to 1.3. This is just a guide, okay? So if you think you can increase more than that, then feel free to do so, but just make sure that you can recover adequately after that. Okay, you just make sure you can recover. Make sure you don't get aggravated after that. So if you increase to, let's say, 960 kilos, like this like this theoretical person did here, and then the week before they did 550, and that sort of work ratio is 1.74, and then they woke up after that week 2. After this session, they went home to sleep. They woke up the next day, and they were like, "Oh my God, my knee's so sore." Then obviously this was too much. They probably should have maybe gone up by, instead of 960, they probably should have gone up to maybe 700, 750 or something like that. A bit less of a spike in load ideally. But let's say this particular person does pretty well after this. So then he, let's say, I'll just change the color just to make it a bit more, just a bit more delineated. That's all. So let's say this person here starts off the next week and they're like, sweet, I can squat 5 reps with just the bar. And then they go, maybe the next set, they might go 3 reps for 60 kilos. And then they might go maybe 3 reps at 100 kilos. And then let's say that they do a top single at 140. And then they start doing some, say, 2 lots of, say, 6 back downs at 80 kilos. Okay. So then they add all that, they do all that, they add all that up, and that is 1680. Okay. So then obviously the workload with this would be 1680 divided by that one, which is again 1.75. And again, I'm just dealing with sort of theoretical numbers here, so just bear with me. Let's say they've done this session here. So let's say they've cleared this session, that's green light. They woke up next morning, green light. They've cleared week 2, this session, again, green light. They've cleared session 3, green light. Well, sweet. Then obviously week 4, then they might sort of, let me just, again, do another color to delineate this. Let's just go whatever, let's go green. Let's say they did 2 days. So I'll go week 4, day 1. Nope, week 4, day 1. And then let's say week 4, day 2. Just for example, and then I'm assuming that they're all doing just a normal sort of squat. So then this person does set of 5, just the bar. Because I never do more than 5 reps with just the bar anyway. Please don't shoot me. Let's say they go triple at 60. Let's say today they really sort of work up to 100. Let's say they go another double at 140. And sorry, I'll just move that down. And then let's say they do a single at, say, 160. So you add all that up. That subtotal already is 920. So that's day 1. And then day 2, again, I'm just giving sort of arbitrary numbers here. So then they start doing that. They start chucking in a bit more. So then they might start doing a bit more reps of this, a bit more volume this day. So then they might do even more volume, and then they might do 2 sets of, or maybe even, 2 sets of, like, say, 5 at 130. So then add all them up, and that's, say, 2200. That's a big jump, but still I'm just giving this as an example. This is obviously a very aggressive, this person here, this theoretical person here has made a very, very aggressive jump because he's a little bit crazy. 3120. And then if we go 3120 divided by that, then again, he's made a super aggressive jump of 1.85. Like I said, I probably wouldn't go that high, but I'm just giving you a theoretical example here. If you didn't want to do that, you can easily work backwards. So then I'll just come over here, and as you can see, the weeks go by, and he's increasing his intensity because obviously, he's able to squat more weight, but then this particular person, he or she, is building up the volume slowly. And then, so as you can see, the weekly sort of total volumes go up, up and up and up, and hopefully you'll reach somewhere around here. And hopefully by the time you reach somewhere around here, you may be able to start sort of your normal program. So another example would be, for example, let's say if we use the 550 again, so total volume. So let's say volume week 1 is 550. And then let's say you wanted to, let's say you want to work backwards, right? So then if you go, I'll just use my calculator because it's quickly here. I'm just going to grab this. 550 times 1.4. So then if you're aiming for like a 770 volume week 2, right? Then then let's say you wanted to, use sort of, these guides, and you want to go, oh, okay, I might just go 1.4. So this is 1.4. 1.4 times the week before. So then you work backwards. So then you have this total volume here at 770. So then you need to break that 770 down. So then you may need to break it down with how many sets with the 20, how many sets with say 40, how many sets with 60. So then you could potentially go, for say 5 reps of 20, 5 reps of 40, 5 reps of 60, see what that encounters. So 20 times 5, 100, 40 times 5, 200, 6 times 5, 300. And that's already 600. That's already 600. That's subtotal of 600 kilos. So then you can add sort of maybe a set of 100 there, which will give you a subtotal of 700. Okay, so then you go 70 times 1. So that's 70. So then the subtotal ends up being what you wanted. So you could either sort of go by, so in this particular example here, if we come back to here, you can either go by feel and just kind of just increase it gradually to see what you can come up with. So let's say on the day, you just want to work up to a top triple, and then you might want to do some back downs. So then you just go by feel if you're into sort of RPE and whatnot. Again, week 3, same thing, you're going by feel. Oh, I might do a single 140, and then at 140, you start feeling it, and then you're like, okay, I might call it. Then you might want to do some back downs, 2x6 at 80, and then so on and so forth. So then this, obviously, this particular individual's just crazy aggressive. It's not me at all. So then, this particular individual goes for a top single 160, feels it there, calls it for the day, but then he returns, say, approximately, if this is day 1, this will be day 3 or 4. So say day 4. So he gives himself 3 days or 72 hours to recover, to allow the tendon to recover after that bout. Then this time he goes for more volume, builds it up, and then you get that total volume during the week. So the knee's handling more and more and more. So these are just sort of theoretical examples. This is kind of like working sort of, by feel and just increasing it gradually. This is more like, okay, I've got the answer here and I want to work backwards. So then if I go, for example, 770 times 1.4, so that's, this be say 1100 here, and then you could slowly gradually work up. So 1.4, 1540, then 2150, for example, and 3018. Notice how it's increasing a fair bit. These jumps might be too high, depending on how your tendon responds. So then you might go 2600, then you might go 3000, then you might go 3500, then you might go 4000. And then that will be week 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, so on and so forth. And you can see here that in this particular example, it's taken this individual 9 weeks to get up to that volume that they needed to get up to. And so this is why I'm saying that, this can take a while, but these are not hard and fast rules. Everyone progresses differently, but I just wanted to sort of illustrate these numbers so that maybe you potentially could understand this a bit more. That's sort of how I approached rehabbing sort of my own quad tendon. I had a rough sort of volumes. I had a rough volume to get up to, but I kind of just adjusted on the day. So then even if I wanted to, say, for example, hit that 140 for a single, if I already felt it at 100, I would have just called it there at 100. I might have done some back downs of like 60 or 80 kilos, for example. Like I said, this way relies on this. If you want to do it this way, it does rely on you knowing yourself a lot. If you want to do it this way, this can work as well, but the main principles still stand. You just got to monitor how your tendon responds and then go from there. So that's just getting you back into the weights aspect of it. Obviously, like I said, there's another aspect of it, which is the plyometric and jumping aspect of it, which you need to build up gradually. That's probably about what I want to say so far with regards to sort of rehabbing tendons. Just know that tendons require sort of stimulation. How often you can stimulate them? Well, it depends. I think in the beginning, you could probably do multiple little bouts of tiny sort of like low load stimulations. But then as you sort of build up the loads, you do need to recover. And then as you sort of get back to what you normally do, you're going to need that's at least that sort of 24 to 72 hour recovery window before you can stimulate the tendon again. So yeah, the answer is not that simple. It depends. And like I said, us physios have done enough sort of work in this kind of field to know roughly what's going on and how we can guide you. So this stuff's pretty interesting. I've had a few tendinopathies myself, and that combined with sort of all the research that's out there and all the literature that's out there, that's kind of how I've come to this sort of conclusion on how to sort of rehab this tendon. Like I said, you need to understand as well, and this is the last thing before you guys fall asleep. I'm going to share one more screen, and I think it's this video, and this is just an example of me squatting, right? And just keep in mind that when you're squatting, I mean, depends on what your form is like. I might go here again. When you get back to squatting, I don't have a video for comparison. I have to look in my archives. What archives? But I don't know if you can see. I might recover. I might redo this again. But when I squat, I want to get to optimize my own technique. I need to get my knees forward over my toes, but obviously I don't want my heels coming up. And so I don't know if you notice here, but you can see almost like some hesitation of me squatting as I descend. And so I noticed that I am a little bit hyper aware, and I do notice that when I got back into squatting, my body was a bit hesitant to put my knees over my toes because it hurt. That's basically it. And if you know that, then you know what you need to do, because eventually, in order to squat the best mechanics that you can under significantly heavy loads, you need to perform your ideal technique. And so if your ideal technique for squatting involves your knees going over your toes heaps far, well, then that's what you need to get back to. I just wanted to illustrate that. Give me one sec, I might just close sort of this video, and then I might open another video If I can find it somewhere. There it is, the back view. Give me 1 sec, and then I'll quickly share this screen, and then you can potentially see as well another compensation, so that you're aware of it. Okay, so here it is. And you can see here that I'm clearly biasing towards my right side, and I'm getting away from my left side because it hurts. Duh. Obviously, if you guys are astute enough, you can see there's a difference here as well, but that's because I probably have bone chips on my left elbow. That's a story for another time. Whether that contributes to this is, you can discuss that, but you can clearly see in this sort of steel frame here that I am compensating by sort of shifting over to my right side because I don't want to load the left side. So when you're dealing with, again, when you're dealing with rehabbing this tendon, the tendons don't want to be rehabbed because obviously it's sore, but if you want optimal tendon rehab, you're gonna have to load that left side in some way, shape, or form. It's just doing it in a systematic way so that you can, so that the symptoms don't flare up, and you can slowly load the tendon, get the tendon stronger, tell your brain that the tendon's like good to go, and then you can squat normally. And so, like I said, you either need to take a video of yourself from multiple angles so you can see that, or you need a qualified professional who can assess you. So, like I said, really, really important. So that's about all I got at the moment. If you guys got any questions, please, please, please feel free to ask me over social media. You can ask me in person. You can message me. You can tease me for my lack of bench press skill for now. But until next time, if there's anything else you guys want me to go over, let me know. If you guys need clarification or anything, I'm more than happy to go through that. If you guys like it, let me know. If you guys don't like it, let me know as well. I just wanted to provide content out there that people could actually use, because I've just seen sort of a lot of tendon content, and people talk about the principles a lot, and principles are nice, but you kind of want to see that sort of process in action. So then that's sort of why I've wanted to sort of create this little recording for a while. Hope that helps. Till next time. See you guys later.